Israel's enemies,
Ah,
those who
okay, no, oh my God, this is fantastic. Okay, so he claims that the Western values that Israel personifies is biotechnology and the 10 Commandments. If you like my content, you become a member for as little as 99 cents a month, and you get access to cute little jester hats and emojis when I go live. If you hit the bell icon, you'll be notified of when I go live. You can also support me on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. This next video we're going to be reacting to is called What Free Palestine Really Means. It's from PragerU. PragerU is being pushed in a lot of American schools to be taught. It's being taught in classrooms. And the Trump administration is considering replacing PBS content, which is our public broadcasting service, with PragerU's videos. So we'll see how this goes. I'm not exactly thinking it's going to be great, but let's see what they have to say on this topic.
On October 7, 2023, Hamas invaded Israel. They murdered over 1,200 defenseless people.
Okay, so I can tell this is going to be a good one. So we already have an issue here. There is a theory in history called the disappearing points, where something happens in history and then everything that happened before that event just disappears. And it is never thought about. Okay. October 7th was a tragic event, okay, where a lot of innocent people were killed. Absolutely. But this whole situation did not start at October 7th, okay? It's been a long history of Israel pushing Palestinians off their land, keeping them in these giant open air prisons, depriving them of water, electricity, bombing them occasionally. And there was even one big event. I mean, there was a lot of ethnic cleansing, but the biggest event version of this was the Nakba, which was a massive ethnic cleansing that took place. So to kind of start with October 7th is really to miss a lot of the context that is necessary for understanding this conflict.
Including children. They raped, tortured, pillaged, and took 250 hostages. The next day, large crowds gathered in Western cities, London, Paris, New York, and on college campuses, not to condemn the Hamas terrorists, but to endorse their actions.
Okay. A lot of these protests had nothing to do with endorsing Hamas. Okay, you know what? I'll even give them maybe some of those folks were endorsing Hamas. Regardless, these were not like pro-Hamas demonstrations. They were demonstrations of outrage against what was predicted to be a vicious response by Israel, which turned out to be true. And the protests that are happening now are still against the actions of the Israeli government, the ethnic cleansing and genocide they're doing against the Palestinians. I also want to point out something here. For those that were being pro-Hamas, okay, I would not do that. That is just my personal opinion. But I will say this: it is weird. For example, there was a major slave uprising in the United States. Okay, and by Nat Turner. And Nat Turner and a bunch of enslaved people did a massive uprising, and they went plantation to plantation, burning down the plantations, and they killed quite a few white slave owners and even their children and women. Okay, again, tragic. It's always sad to see children die and things like that. But how do I frame this? I would not be comfortable if people were like, yeah, these slaves revolted. I would not be comfortable criticizing that. I just wouldn't. Okay, because what did the United States expect to happen? If you abuse people, if you treat them like shit, and eventually they revolt, what do you expect? Okay, so even if there were people that were being expressing support for Hamas, I don't know if that's something that is something that needs to be demonized. Okay.
History will regard this shocking sequence of events in one of two ways, either as the unofficial end of Western civilization or the shock that finally awakened enough people to save it. I say this because Israel personifies the values we associate with Western civilization, both as a source.
Okay. Oh, God. Okay. I love this. PragerU loves using the phrase, Western civilization. Okay. Israel personifies the values associated with Western civilization. So, you know what? I will I'll buy that. Okay, let's say Israel does personify Western civilization values, whatever that means. It is true that so called Western civilization, European nations, America, Japan, etc., have engaged in some pretty horrific things: colonialism, imperialism, wars of conquest, genocide, apartheid. So, okay, hey, if that's what they want to say is that Israel personifies those values of Western civilization, I'm on board. I am totally on board.
Of those values and their modern manifestation. Everything from the Ten Commandments to biotechnology. Israel's enemies,
Ah,
those who
okay, okay, no, oh my God, this is fantastic. Okay, so he claims that the Western values that Israel personifies is biotechnology and the Ten Commandments. You know what's interesting? Okay. First of all, there are plenty of quote unquote non-Western, I even hate using these terms, nations that are great with biotechnology. Okay, first of all. Second of all, um, uh, they do not mention any of the so-called Western values that could be viewed as positive things. And you know why they don't mention them? Because Israel definitely doesn't fall in line with those. For example, religious toleration. Um, um, uh, the equality of all human beings. Okay. Those, if you want to say those are Western values, would be some examples of Western values that they're weirdly not mentioning because it clearly doesn't apply to Israel. Okay. A democratic form of governance that isn't an apartheid state would be a Western, a so called Western form of governance. Okay. Anyway.
attacked on October 7 do not share these values. They have no interest in representative democracy,
Uh,
freedom of speech, or freedom of religion. Hamas and its patron Iran run brutal dictatorships. They make no pretense about their immediate goal, the total
so I should have paused this earlier. It's just so nonsensical. Palestine doesn't have its own state. And by the way, if you mistreat people, if anyone in a society is mistreated, embargoed, resources are kept from them. They are treated with violence constantly. What happens naturally is the rise of more radical forms of governance. It is a human thing. It is not a Palestinian thing or an Iranian thing or whatever else they said there. And there were actually elections in Palestine a while back now. It has been a while, but it's not like there weren't elections. And even if, let's say they had been having elections, they certainly don't have much choice in the outcome because Israel will decide what they want in the end and attack if they don't like it. Again, this is just it's just not true. Okay, I like it's or at the very least it's massively oversimplified and doesn't take into account context. Um,
destruction of the Jewish state. Their ultimate goal, the subjugation of all non Muslims. To compare them to the Nazis,
oh my God, oh my God, the subjugation of all non Muslims. Okay, so no, no. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I just said no and yes. Yeah, there are some very, very, very fringe Muslims. Some very fringe Muslims who do believe in like global domination of Islam. There are also Christians who are fringe who believe that, and some of them are less fringe than a lot of the Muslims are in terms of the number of them, etc. There are Jewish people. There are Jewish folks who believe that Jewish folks should dominate the world, etc. Like as in Jewish, but they're also fringe. Okay. The vast majority of Muslims do not believe that they are human beings like everyone else. And by the way, yes, the Hamas charter did used to have a provision that basically said some things in it like we need to get rid of Israel, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Um, There are also Black Americans who think that white Americans are evil and that they should form, and that Black Americans should form their own separate country. Because what happens after years of abuse, mistreatment, death, you've heard me say it before, is that there is political radicalization that often goes along with religious radicalization. So if you don't want religious radicalization, maybe you should stop abusing people and giving them the impression that your particular religion is violent and horrible and wants to destroy them. Okay. Yes, Israel is not the same as Judaism, but it is an easy mistake to make if the only experience you've had of Jewish Israelis is them bombing your homes, okay, killing your children, cutting off your water, your electricity, things like that. Kinda makes sense. Kinda makes sense, 'kay? Like, this is not, and I will point out too, early Islam and even later up to, like, the Ottoman Empire, there was perfectly fine coexistence between different religions. Yeah, there were some taxes levied on non-Muslims, but, like, we're not talking extreme here, and as a matter of fact, Jewish people were treated better in Islamic countries than Jewish people were treated in Christian Europe at the time. So, again, not an issue with Islam, and completely missing the context.
In their Jew hatred is entirely apt, except for one perverse distinction. The Nazis worked hard to hide their crimes. Hamas brags about theirs. This was a defining feature of the October 7 massacre. The terrorists used GoPro cameras to broadcast it to the world.
So, let's talk about the Nazis briefly, shall we? I think the actions, if you want to make a comparison to the Nazi era, let's do that. Or is Hamas more like the Nazi centralized state with its vast power and resources? Or is it more like the people who rose up in the Warsaw Ghetto? Because to me, Hamas is more aligned, if we want to make that comparison, with the Jewish folks who rose up in the Warsaw Ghetto and fought back against their oppressors violently. They did not have much power. They did what they could to fight back, and you can imagine that those Jewish people in the Warsaw Ghetto did not like Germans very much. Could probably even say they hated them, and especially Nazis. So yeah, I have no problem comparing it to Nazi times, but get your damn comparisons right. It would be more apt to compare Hamas to the partisans of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising than it would be to compare Hamas to the Nazi regime.
When the hostages arrived back in Gaza, many bloodied and brutalized, cheering crowds filled the streets. Hamas likely assumed the past would be prologue, that after a limited military incursion, Israel would back down under international pressure as it had under previous wars in 2008, 2012, 2014, and 2021.
So these previous incursions that he's referring to, I like how I like how they leave out details here. There was actually a phrase that was going along around the Israeli government at the time, and it was called "mowing the lawn." Okay, the idea here was as Gaza starts developing too much. People start having too much freedom there. We occasionally have to quote unquote, this is a quote, you can look it up, mow the lawn, cut them down to size a bit. So yeah, there were incursions and stuff, and Israel always took the opportunity to bomb the hell out of Gaza, kill hundreds to thousands of people in order to mow the lawn. So, and then he makes it sound like it's bad that they would back down under international pressure. Um, I mean, why was there international pressure? And by the way, yeah, okay, all right.
But this time was different. Even as it was restrained by the Biden administration, Israel pushed past all previous limits. It demanded Hamas return the hostages and relinquish control over Gaza, or face destruction, however long it took. Israel had no choice. All governments understand that their first obligation is to protect their citizens. But for some reason,
Okay, I'm going to pause there. I'm going to go back a little bit here. I had trouble kind of hearing what he said.
the hostages and relinquish control over Gaza, or face destruction, however long it took. Israel had no choice. All governments understand.
So, okay. it's obvious now that that was not Israel's goal. Okay. Yeah, they wanted to remove Hamas, but that wasn't their ultimate goal. Yeah, they wanted and by the way, I don't even know if they wanted the hostages back. They killed a lot of their own hostages, and every time Hamas has offered peace deals, they have refused to agree with those deals. Israel has, or they've sabotaged them, or they've killed the negotiators. And by the way, if you ever see pictures of Gaza now, it's a pile of rubble. I really doubt Hamas is quote unquote in control of the Gaza Strip, nor have they been in a while because there's nothing really left. And they also killed all the leadership of Hamas. So if that was their goal, they would have ended a while ago. They have not achieved that goal. And that makes me think that that was not their goal because their goal is ethnic cleansing. They've said it openly. A lot of the top members of Netanyahu's cabinet has said that their goal is to cleanse the Gaza Strip, to take it for Israel, to occupy it permanently, to take back what was lost, to develop it into real estate. It is ethnic cleansing. That is their goal, which is why they have not ended the war when given the opportunity many times, even when it came to an exchange of hostages and things like that. And if you want to protect your hostages, then you wouldn't be killing them. And I think it was even Netanyahu, I could be wrong about that. Check me on that, folks, who basically said that we can't focus on the hostages. There's a bigger goal here. So again, they can what a person says or a country says versus what they do is super important. Okay.
And that their first obligation is to protect their citizens.
As a matter of fact, I just remembered here, Hamas did agree to release all the hostages 3 days after October 7th, but Israel denied the proposal. Um, and I want to point out too that in the meantime, Israel was doing things like shooting up ambulances, and burying people in ambulances. Anyway, okay.
But for some reason, in the eyes of much of the world, Israel is the exception to this rule. It may
Nope, nope, nope. No one in the world says that Israel doesn't have a right to quote unquote protect itself. Okay, every nation has a right to protect itself. But that's not what Israel's doing. How does the slaughter of 60 some thousand, probably much more than that, but those are the only figures we have, 60 some thousand, 67,000 last I checked, civilians, how does that equate to defending yourself when a large portion, especially of those civilians, are children? Our children. As a matter of fact, about half the population in Gaza were children when the war started. So no, the international community is not going after Israel for defending itself. It is going after Israel for committing massive war crimes and doing a genocide. That is very obvious is what they're doing. It has gone beyond defense. And by the way, if you think I'm being biased here, I would say the same thing about America when it invaded Iraq, or when it invaded Iraq, claiming that the Iraqis had something to do with 9/11. This was self-defense to protect America from Saddam Hussein developing a weapon of mass destruction, and then they proceeded to slaughter hundreds of thousands of civilians, destroy the infrastructure of the country, and things like that. And the world was very angry about that too, most of it. Okay, so again, that is, but no one thought that, oh, the United States has a right to defend itself. Okay, no one didn't like America for that reason. Okay, that is a distraction, obviously.
defend itself, but only to a point, which is like saying to a surgeon, you can cut out the cancer, but not all of it. As in previous Gaza wars, the burden to end the conflict was placed not on the aggressors, but on the nation they attacked. At any moment, Hamas could have spared its people further suffering by releasing the hostages.
And again, Hamas tried to release the hostages several times. Israel wouldn't allow it. And this last part right here, one second
Was
here.
placed not on the aggressors, but on the nation they attacked.
I love this. So there is here is this idea that poor little Israel, having the burden placed on them. Israel is a nuclear power. It has a very powerful military. It is a military power in the Middle East. Hamas is a ragtag group of fighters who basically have like the equivalent of bottle rockets that they can fire. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but the person with the power in this situation is Israel. It is not Hamas. Okay, no one doubts that Israel could easily destroy the entire Gaza Strip if they wanted to. Okay, and they have. Or that they could defeat Hamas in any way. They also have complete control over the Gaza Strip. And by the way, According to international law, an occupied people, which is what the Palestinians are, have a right to armed resistance. So, no, the burden here is on Israel. Yes, it is, and it should be. It should not be on Hamas, okay?
Act. At any moment, Hamas could have spared its people further suffering by releasing the hostages, but it refused to do so. In response, Israel did what militaries have done.
Nope, nope. I'm sure there were times where it refused to do so because Israel was saying, well, yeah, give us the hostages and then we'll keep occupying the Gaza Strip. But it was also several times where Israel said, refused the Hamas's offers of the hostages. And then, of course, Israel proceeded to go kill some of those hostages.
Done throughout the history of warfare, applied greater military pressure with the goal of vanquishing the enemy bent on destroying it. So again, we must ask, why is Israel, the nation savagely attacked, portrayed as the villain, and the savage attackers?
Okay, $10 for everyone watching that they're going to say it's because everyone's anti-Semitic. $10. $10 says that. You know what? 50. Let's make it 50, okay? Why is Israel portrayed as the villain and Hamas, whatever, viewed as the victim? Okay, let's see what they say.
As heroes. By any reasonable moral calculus, shouldn't it be the other way around? It should, but it's not. The reason is tragic, though not surprising. Israel has many haters. First, the Islamists, which sadly includes most of the Arab world and much of the Muslim.
Oh, no. Okay. Did they say, I'm sorry, he said, let's see here.
Which sadly includes most of, is tragic, though not surprising. Israel has many haters. First, the Islamists, which sadly includes.
So, okay, you know what? Let's. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if the majority of the Muslim world hates Israel, but honestly, if they do, what do they expect? What does Israel expect? You are killing people. You're mass slaughtering children. You're mass slaughtering. What do you expect to happen? Okay, you also are what do you expect to happen when you're killing a bunch of people like that who are Muslims? Okay. By the way, they are also killing Christians. There's Christians who live in Gaza whose churches have been bombed and stuff. Regardless, yeah, I'm sure a lot of Muslims in the Arab world do not like Israel. Because I should also point out that Israel has also bombed a lot of those countries or promoted war against a lot of Islamic countries. So would it make sense that there are a lot of Muslims who aren't a fan of Israel? Okay. Let's say it's true. I mean, I don't know if that is true that most of them hate Israel, but I wouldn't blame them if they did. Okay. That's sort of a human reaction to what they are experiencing. Okay.
Much of the Muslim non-Arab world. Millions of these Islamists, taught from birth to hate Jews, now live in Europe and America.
No. See, again, we're doing this conflation, conflating Israel with Jews, right? I'm sure there are some places because of the oppression and stuff where this has been conflated with Jews in the Middle East. But okay, again, the issue here is Israel. It's not Jews, and I know most Muslims understand that. Okay, most Muslims, I know that for a fact, understand that. Okay, and let's say they don't. I understand why they think that way, right? It's not. Is it accurate? No. Is it understandable based off their situation? Yeah.
Where they engage in furious anti-Israel advocacy. For them, death to Israel and death to Jews is a matter of faith.
Oh my God, no, it is not a matter of faith. This is just Islamophobia. There's nothing in the Quran or anything like that that's like, by the way, you should eliminate all that. You see what I mean here, okay? This any group can develop a very hateful view of another group, especially if they feel that they're being oppressed by that group. Yeah, I can understand the anger. I can understand the anger there. Again, I am not it is not the same as Jews. I mean, like Israel's not the same as Jews, but you can see where the conflation happens.
Second, the anti-Semites, members of humanity's oldest hate club, convinced Jews are to blame for nearly
here we go.
every calamity. Impervious to logic and facts, they naturally want Israel gone. Third,
Wow, that was very in-depth and very academically accurate. Okay, no, no. As a matter of fact, some of the biggest critics of Israel are Jewish. Norman Finkelstein, Noam Chomsky, there are many others I can think of. So, no, criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitism. I've said this 1,000 times, okay? Some of my heroes are Jewish, who are against what the government of Israel is doing. And yeah, uh, admittedly, I'm sure there are out there a very small portion of people who are anti Semitic and so hate Israel for that reason. Sometimes you can see that on the right wing, but we're talking the vast majority of people who are speaking out against Israel are speaking out against Israel, not Jews.
The hardened leftists. This group includes many journalists and academics. They despise Western civilization and want to see it brought low. Since Israel embodies Western civilization and all of its supposed ills, Israel is enemy number one. Fourth, the overeducated. Those indoctrinated
Oh, okay, yeah. So the overeducated, right? Yeah. Might there be a correlation between having an education and understanding what Israel's doing genocide and things like that? So of course, the overeducated all just don't like what Israel's doing because they know a lot of educated people know what's happening and they don't buy for the propaganda. Okay, of which there's a lot out there, folks. There's a lot of pro-Israeli propaganda out there. Um,
into the leftist narrative. Israel is the oppressor and the Palestinians, the oppressed. In this worldview, the oppressor can do no right.
so that honestly, folks, that's just a statement of fact. That is just a statement of fact. Israel is the oppressor and the Palestinians are the oppressed. I don't know. Okay, in their worldview, water is wet and the sky is blue. Y yeah. That okay.
And the oppressed can do no wrong. Burning whole families alive is a legitimate form of resistance.
Wait a minute. Burning whole families alive in their worldview is a legitimate form of resistance. So, okay, I love this. This is a confession. Who has been burning whole families alive? Israel. Israel has been burning whole families alive. They've been burning children alive. That's what bombs do, folks. They explode and then they burn you alive or they blow you to pieces, okay? So if they want to criticize, this is enraging to me, okay? If they want to criticize, um, they're like people who think it's okay, a form of resistance, to burn people alive. Who are you talking about then? Are you that blind?
Fifth, the ignorant. The protest crowds who self righteously endorse the latest leftist cause, whether systemic racism, transgender rights,
I love this. I love this. Okay. I love this. You're either here's so okay, he included two different groups here. If you don't support Israel, if you're not an obedient slug to whatever to Israel's narrative, okay? You're either overeducated or you're ignorant. Okay? I that is hilarious. That is hilarious. That is hilarious, right? I mean that covers everything, doesn't it? Yeah, okay. Okay.
or now settler colonialism. They chant from the
Which it is. It is settler colonialism.
river to the sea without knowing or caring which river or which sea. Six, a growing faction on the right that resents Israel because they think it drags the U.S. into Middle East conflict
Hey, based. I am not on the right, but that is based. Okay. Hey, wins where you get them. For the people on the right who don't support Israel, more power to you. I don't support almost anything you say, but hey, comrades, if you want to help push against supporting Israel, I'm all for that. Based.
against America's own interests. They ignore 2 centuries of United States involvement in the region, starting with the Barbary Pirates, for reasons
Hilarious. Hilarious. Okay, this is just a history note. The Barbary Pirates were North Africa. They weren't even in the Middle East. And that was a completely different time, a completely different set of circumstances. I don't even know why you'd bring up the Barbary Pirates. It's so weird. Why don't we talk about like Hammurabi Or like, let's go back to what about I don't know, what about I don't know Charlemagne? Like, it doesn't make. What do you mean? It doesn't make any sense. Completely different circumstances.
that are difficult to fathom, many indulge the bizarre fantasy that a country of 10 million people control through blackmail and other malevolent means a nation of 350 million people.
So, okay, this is a complicated issue. There are anti-Semitic conspiracy theories that go back to the protocols of the Elder Design that claim that there is a cabal of Jewish people that control everything. Okay, I'm not dismissing that, and a lot of times people do conflate these two things. However, it is a fact. It is a fact that American politicians are deeply corrupt, and one of the biggest donors to American politicians is an organization called AIPAC and other pro-Israel lobby groups that funnel millions of dollars to American politicians. And do we think that maybe that has something to do with a lot of these politicians being utterly pro-Israel all the time? And by the way, if you think that's anti-Semitic, a lot a lot of these people that do these donations are Christians. They are Christians. So, and they're not Israelis. So, yeah, there is a lot of bribery that goes on and campaign finance that goes on that is pro Israel coming from Jews, Christians, Zionists generally in the United States that does heavily influence a lot of our politicians. Okay, that is just true. Now, intelligence services like Mossad and stuff might do blackmail and stuff. We don't really know. Obviously, that stuff is secret. But most intelligence services do that sort of thing. But there is, that is a lot of that again, there is influence from Israel over the United States. It is not like a cabal of Jewish folks that do it, but there is. It's just a fact in terms of campaign finance, etc.
And has consistently done so through multiple administrations. All these groups share one thing in common. They effectively want Israel to commit suicide, to let itself be destroyed.
Oh my God. No one thinks that. No one thinks that. I don't know anyone. I mean, okay, yeah, there are some very fringe people who might think that, but the vast majority of people don't want Israel to be destroyed, okay? They just want the slaughter to stop, the oppression. They want Palestine to be free. I mean, okay.
That Israel refuses only enrages them further. That Islamists and anti-Semites advocate for Israel's destruction at least makes sense given their worldview. That others share that goal does not. Because by joining the enemies of Western civilization and pushing Israel to
Oh my God, the Western civilization phrase. I'm going to lose my mind. The enemies of Western civilization.
commit suicide, they're cutting their own throats. I'm Larry Elder for Prager University. Thank you for watching this video.
By the way, there are other ways for Israel to exist without occupying another people and colonizing them and things like that. And it would actually be better for Israel, okay? Yeah, they are facing a lot of resistance in the face of their settler colonialism, which has resulted in a lot of Israelis also dying. So, if you want to protect the Israeli people, maybe stop the settler colonialism and start treating your neighbors like human beings. Stop bombing everyone around you, and it would actually be better for Israel. So, it would not be what they just said, unaliving Israel, to not let them do a genocide. Okay, if anything, it's worse for Israel. And we've actually seen all around the world a massive spike in anti-Semitism. Um, uh, a massive spike in anti-Semitism because of Israel's actions in the Middle East. Okay, anyway, so it's bad for Israel. It's bad for Jewish people overall. And a lot of Jewish folks are very angry at what the Israeli government's doing, is because it is affecting them personally because now they're being targeted with more anti-Semitism. Okay,